Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating young woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Courtney Motyczka. I am currently located just outside of Orlando, Florida. I'm originally from New Jersey, and I moved around a little bit before landing in Florida. I'm so excited to be here today to tell you about my story and how I developed in my career and hopefully inspire you to develop in yours. So starting with my career journey, when I was younger, I wanted to be so many different things. I found myself always being really interested in a lot of different areas. I finally decided that I wanted to be a social worker when it was time for me to go to school. I had a passion for helping others, and I really wanted to see how I could expand on that. I quickly learned after starting my bachelor's degree in the process of education and the education system that becoming a social worker was probably not it for me. As some of you may know, for social work to really grow in that field, it's important to have a master's degree, and I really wanted to hit the ground running. So I had a little bit of a shift. I started my bachelor's degree. I went to school out of state, and I very quickly realized I didn't have the funding to do what I wanted to do. So I had to make a change. I had to make a change very quickly. It was a very last minute change, but that is the woes of careers and lives, right? So after starting my bachelor's degree and realizing that I needed to shift in another direction, I got an associate's degree in human services. So I still kind of continued down that path of learning more about social work. And then I had to make a decision after getting my associate's degree of what do I do next and how do I go about doing it. I still really wanted to get a bachelor's degree. I love learning and I love going to school. But I needed to find something to, start paying bills and get myself on my feet, right? So I worked a lot throughout college, and I worked a lot of different part-time jobs to help put myself through school. And I knew I didn't want to do that forever. I knew I wanted to somehow still be able to help people, still be able to pay my bills, right? And not have to work 3 jobs for the rest of my life. So I decided that I was going to get a more stable full-time hourly job and just see where it takes me. And that landed me as a customer service representative for a company that was actually a seasonal role. There was an opportunity to be there full-time and not be laid off for the season. So as soon as I started, I went to my boss and I said, I cannot afford to be laid off. I have to have this job all year round. What do I have to do? And she really gave me the blueprint. And before I knew it, I, really got into my job. I really focused on what I had to do to be successful in that role. And within a few months, I went to her and I said, okay, I really like this job. Tell me how to do your job. Tell me how I can get your position. I want your job. And fortunately, she was receptive to that. I was very young, but I was really just very motivated to move forward in my career. So she started to kind of give me again, lay down that blueprint for me and kind of give me an idea of, what to do to get promoted. And I was promoted very quickly, but the deal was that I had to relocate. So I was given the promotion. I was going to run a customer service center, and that was a little bit more in line with what I wanted to do. I thought, okay, this will give me an opportunity to maybe get some insight into human resources and see if maybe that's another path that I could take. So I took the role. I moved to a city that I had never been to. I moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, having never been there. I took the position, and I got there and quickly learned that I had very few employees. They were really building from the ground up. But I did get the experience that I wanted. I had to do hiring. I had to do training. I had to be a manager. I had to really be everything in that position. And I realized that I loved hiring, I loved training, and I really enjoyed being a manager. However, I was working so many hours and I was exhausted, and I felt like, you know what, this isn't much better than working 3 part-time jobs. I'm working just as many hours, if not more, and I wanted to do more with it. So I figured out what was a good next step for me, and kind of on a whim, I said, I'm going to quit my job. And it felt crazy at the time. It was crazy at the time, but I said, I think I need to quit my job and move to Florida, where school is a little bit cheaper. I'll find a new job and I'll figure it out. And when I called my boss to quit, she said, I don't want you to quit the company, so let's find you a job in Florida. So I was really fortunate that I had people help me out along the way, right? But I think being open with people about what I wanted and what I needed was really helpful to getting me to those next steps. So once I started in Florida with that company, they had promised me, when you go back to school, we'll work with your school schedule. And I really believed that promise until it was time, right? I had gotten accepted to University of Central Florida. I was going for communications, and I realized pretty quickly when it was time to change my work schedule that wasn't going to happen. They weren't able to accommodate my schedule, and I found myself having to find a new job again. And so I made another shift, and that's how I got into education. Believe it or not, I started out in accounting, and I was working in the accounting department. I was counseling a lot of students on their academic performance and how they were costing themselves so much money by failing classes and having to, retake their classes. And I very quickly fell into more of like a coaching and mentoring role, right? And so after I'd worked in the accounting department for a while, the employment department said, hey, we really need, someone with hiring experience. Will you come to our side? And I did. But with that promotion, there was so much left to be desired. I was promoted without a salary increase. My counterpart, who had gotten promoted into my position in accounting, ended up actually getting paid more than what I was making. It was a male counterpart. And I felt like, wow, this is really what the pay gap feels like, right? And I was so frustrated. I had made that step forward, and I thought this is a great opportunity, but it fell short, right? But I made the best of it. Even with all of that, I tried to speak up, and I was kind of told, hey, this isn't really something we're going to address. So I realized quickly I needed to just make the most of the situation and move on. And that's exactly what I did. After about a year and a half there, I found an online university. I went to work with them, and they presented a lot of great opportunities for me to get my resume writing certification and my career coach certification. After having worked in the appointment office for so long with the trade school, and then moving into working for an online university, I was getting so much experience coaching people. But again, I just really wasn't fulfilled quite yet. So I had a friend who really encouraged me to post on LinkedIn. And she said, you have a great way of writing. You should post on LinkedIn. So I started posting regularly, and I developed a following, and I was able to get connected with Yellowtail Tech. So Yellowtail Tech is a company that was started by a couple. It's a tech startup company in ed tech. So we train people on Linux and cloud to become Linux system administrators and cloud administrators. And I've truly found my passion here and been able to really grow and develop and be creative as a career coach. And even though there were a lot of bumps in the road along the way and I didn't have a lot to start with, I felt like this was a really great opportunity for me to grow. And it truly has been. I've been very fortunate. I work with over 150 students. You can find me pretty regularly at conferences and hosting LinkedIn Lives or doing LinkedIn training. It's been a great opportunity to be able to teach others how to advocate for themselves, how to develop in their careers, and also how to really embrace their talents and their strengths. So every day I get to watch people blossom in their career transitions and transitioning into tech, which is something I really wanted to do myself. So I'm fortunate that I was able to find a space in tech that worked for me and that I was able to grow with Yellowtail Tech.
That is absolutely wonderful. Courtney, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. It's really quite fascinating to see how everything evolved and how you eventually found yourself in a position where you're doing what you love and now you're helping others to do the same. So how has your Bachelor of Communication and Conflict shaped your approach to career development and coaching?
So I was really fortunate with my bachelor's degree. I felt like I had an opportunity to kind of tailor my degree a little bit more towards what I wanted. So I took an advocacy class in college. I feel like it's not as common as it should be, but it really taught me a lot about how to advocate for yourself, how to advocate for others, right? And so I think that class in particular was so impactful for me as I moved into career coaching. Especially with the trade school, I found there were a lot of women working in spaces that were predominantly occupied by men, and they really needed that voice of reason to tell them it was okay to say, hey, I don't like this. I don't like the way it sounds. I don't like the way this is working. And so I found that has really impacted my career to be able to not just coach people on, okay, here we've written a resume for you, right? But what do you use that resume for? How do you turn it into something that is a meaningful career, including how to advocate for yourself in your workspaces?
Yeah, it's a challenge, especially for most women, not really knowing your worth sometimes lands you in situations where you're paid less than your male counterparts. And just having that support and advice makes a big difference. So what drew you to Yellowtail Tech, and how does its mission align with your professional values?
So I initially was introduced to Yellowtail Tech. As I mentioned, I was posting more regularly on LinkedIn, and a mutual connection was connected with them. And so then I got connected with them. Something I think that was particularly intriguing to me was the ability to transition out of a corporate space. So that was the initial draw, right? I didn't know that I necessarily wanted to leave corporate, but I think I did want to leave corporate. And so having the ability to work somewhere where I could work with people a little bit more one-on-one was definitely a draw to it. But then as I learned about the company, I learned that they are really focus on changing how people transition into tech. So often a lot of people say, oh, is Yellowtail Tech a boot camp? And I say, well, technically, I guess, but we really don't like to affiliate ourselves with a boot camp because we're focused more on exactly what I do, the career development and being able to give people more information and knowledge so that as they're transitioning, once they get into the tech space, they really feel prepared beyond just knowing the hard skills, right? There's a lot of soft skills that go into tech as well. And so I think the company valuing, right, Yellowtail Tech valuing the need for that was very aligned with my own mission of wanting to be able to provide people with the information that they needed to have these really fulfilling careers and not just give them a resume and have them move along.
So as a career advisor, what does a typical day look like for you at Yellowtail Tech?
Well, it's very busy. I can tell you that. But I spend a lot of my days meeting one-on-one with our students, and we utilize Slack to communicate with our students. So I'm communicating with them fairly regularly, not only over Slack, but of course, in our one-on-one meetings as well. So we do one-on-one coaching sessions, and we also do mock interviews. So all of our students complete a minimum of 3 mock interviews before going into a job search stage. So there's a lot of time spent there as well. But I'm also really heavily focused on the strategy, right? So how can we grow and build and develop, and how can we make the transition even easier for our students as they continue on in this journey? What other areas can we creatively support them?
So, what unique challenges do you face when working with students pursuing careers in tech?
That's a great question. I would say every student's journey is truly unique. And so I don't know if we could really pin it down to just one unique challenge, but everybody's situations are different. And oftentimes, students will even say, sometimes I feel like you're my therapist, right? Because we're working through something that is a very vulnerable space, right? We're talking about salaries, finances, situations at home. And so I think probably one of the most unique things about working in career coaching is being able to have that balance, right? You have to be compassionate, but you also have to hold people accountable. And I think so often we associate accountability with just saying, oh, you have to do this or you have to do that. But it's really bigger than that. It's more about looking at how do you want to accomplish this goal and how can we make that work, and allowing your students to use that space to really brainstorm safely.
Yellowtail Tech tailors its advice strategies. How do you meet the diverse needs of your students and your clients?
So I think really listening to people is critical. Everybody comes from different spaces, different backgrounds, right? And there is a lot of fear that comes in with career transitioning and taking next steps, going outside of our comfort zones, right? And so being an active listener and not just hearing somebody, truly listening to what they need, tapping into how are they really feeling about this? Are they telling you that they're scared, but actually feeling shame, and identifying some of those kind of behind the scenes parts, right? Being able to really be in tune with them so that you can really help them guide them through this really new experience, right? And I think that's one of the things that is critical in coaching.
Now, you describe a resume as a marketing tool. What are some of the biggest mistakes that professionals make with their resumes? And how do you help them to avoid these pitfalls?
Yes, I would say a resume is absolutely a marketing tool. And the biggest mistake that I see with resumes is doing too much with it. A lot of times when we think of marketing, we think of very specific, detailed, thought out marketing, right? Maybe colors and catchphrases and pictures, right? All of these things impact how we are influenced by marketing. But when it comes to your resume, you really want to be simple. You want to be straightforward. You want to be direct to the point. Detailed yet concise is something that I think I say on a daily basis, maybe even an hourly basis. Detailed yet concise with your resume is very critical. Not too long, not too short, right? You want to have that good balance. So we utilize a lot of different methods to help with resume writing. And of course, now with the creation of ChatGPT, there's even more. But I will say I really preach ChatGPT or any AI platform is a tool, not a solution, right? So coaching through that and understanding the balance for sure.
Yeah, it is a tool. A lot of people think it's going to substitute the human element, but it really isn't.
No, I don't think it will.
It's just learning how to use it effectively, I think, is going to be the challenge for most people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And not becoming too dependent on it, right?
So
Yeah.
what are your top tips for turning an interview into a conversation rather than a rigid Q&A session?
That's a great question. I think often interviews I think we go into them feeling like it's going to be a rigid Q&A session, right? I tell my students a lot, go into the interview and once you're there, you have to forget a little bit about what impression you're making, right? You want to go in having prepared for that impression. But once you get there, you can't control what they're thinking or what they're feeling. So you have to just genuinely be you. And it sounds like such cliche guidance. That's one of the dead giveaways in an interview is when people try to match too much, right, to what they think someone else wants. But when you're genuine, it really shines through. And often people are drawn to how other people communicate, right? We tap into different signals, whether it's body language or tone. Facial expression is another one. And so being really conscientious of those parts of it and treating it more, just like you said, more like a conversation and being open to adding in those small tidbits about yourself is really important to kind of turn that around. You don't have to go to an interview and just be really straight and to the point. You can bring your personality with you.
It's a fine balance though, because sometimes you're nervous and
Yes.
you're trying to put your best foot forward, but if you're not careful, it could come off very rehearsed or not authentic.
Absolutely.
So can you share a success story where your coaching made a significant difference in a client's career trajectory?
Absolutely. So I'll share a story about a Yellowtail Tech student. I have for all of our students, we have a similar process as they kind of transition into working with me. So they're working with me towards the end of their program, that they do see me a little bit throughout. And we have Google folders for all of them so that we can collaborate on their resume. And I had a student that started off, they work with me while they're completing an apprenticeship. And so I had a student that was starting off in their apprenticeship. And right from the beginning, he was just very focused on getting a job, right? And so he was taking all of those very critical steps. Like I think he completed his resume in an hour and he was messaging me all the way through it. It was like he was so, just so focused on this and regularly scheduling meetings and doing check-ins. And he really took the guidance and ran with it, was posting regularly on LinkedIn. And so he was able to successfully transition from being a police officer into GovTech and has really developed a personal brand for himself and often does events just like this and has just really grown. Practically, it feels like overnight. In less than a year, there's been a total turnaround for him. So it's been tremendous to see.
That must be quite fulfilling for you to actually see the results of your work, especially when somebody takes on all of the advice and techniques that help them move their career forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell my students that your desire and your want for your goal has to be greater than your fear. And I feel like for him in particular, there was almost no fear.
Now, your organization also focuses on career development as a philosophy for a good company. You emphasize making career development accessible to everyone. How do you ensure inclusivity and equity in your work?
I think it's important to, again, this is, I think, really part of listening to people, right? And understanding what their backgrounds are, where they're struggling, what their needs are. We could create, a very black and white, kind of career course or templates or, things like that. We could make it very standardized. But I think that really takes away from the appreciation of every person's unique identities. And while we do have a lot of those things in place to give people a starting point, having that one-on-one time with them and being able to really talk about their individual situations. Sometimes people need accommodations, right? Sometimes it's something as small as, I have kids at home, I can't meet you until 6 o'clock in the evening, whatever the case may be, right? Those are the small things that I can do. Other times it's bigger fears, right? Like, is my name not getting me hired? Or is this, as a woman trying to break into a field that's very male dominated, is that holding me back, right? So having those conversations and creating safe spaces to have those conversations is critical.
What is the most rewarding aspect of your role as a career advisor at Yellowtail Tech?
That is a tough question. Only because I have so many answers. But I think I'll say two things. I'll say on the back end of things, the colleagues that I have are tremendous. There's so much support, and I have to give them a ton of credit, because even in other departments, so often they'll ask me questions about what is going on with our career success team, right? And so having a true interest in it, which is something I would recommend for any organization as they're building, make sure everybody is kind of on board, because this is the end result part. But also just the ability and the opportunity to have an impact for so many people, and to be able to have these conversations that at times are life-changing, right? Sometimes I meet with a student and initially they're so nervous to even meet with me, they're hardly even ready to talk, and then after a couple of sessions of meeting, it's like I get a whole new person. And those transitions are some of the best ones.
Yeah. That must be quite rewarding, because you're kind of seeing it real time as somebody is evolving in their understanding of themselves, and with your help and support, they're gaining that confidence.
Definitely.
And this is really why people need to go out there and secure the support and the help that they need. That is fascinating. Sure. What are your long-term goals in career advising, and how do you envisage continuing to support professionals in achieving success?
Yeah, absolutely. I really love my job. I love what I do. I'm really passionate about it. So I'm excited to grow within it. I am continuing to grow my LinkedIn following. I did take a little bit of a break over the holidays, but I'll be picking that right back up. And I would love to grow with Yellowtail Tech and grow our career success team. Right now, I have a career success associate who I'm helping to mentor and getting some of the same certifications. So I'd like to see our department grow as a whole, and for Yellowtail Tech to grow as a whole, for more visibility on what we're doing, because it's a great mission.
Last question. What advice would you give a young student who is trying to get some work? Give us 3 tips, 3 nuggets of wisdom on how to be successful when you are job hunting.
The first thing I would say is fight the fear. There is oftentimes a lot of fear in job search. People are hesitant to send the message. They're hesitant to post on LinkedIn. Fight that fear and just do what you have to do to break into your industry. The second piece of advice I would give is be creative. I think people really underestimate how much we as individuals can contribute to a workspace, right? We talk a lot about hard skills and experience. All these things can feel a bit daunting, especially if you're new in an industry. But don't forget about who you are and how much that can be valued in a workplace. So be creative as you market that. Be creative in your interviews, be creative on your LinkedIn pages, really tell your own individual story. And last, I would say, I know I mentioned this earlier, but I say it so often, your goal, your desire for your goal has to be greater than your fear. So push through, right? Stick with it. Find something you're really passionate about and fight for it, but you don't have to marry it, okay? Your career can change and develop, and it's okay to make switches. It's okay to start in one place and move to a different. So don't feel like if you get into something and it's not the right fit that you can't make a move. You can change your career at any time.
Thank you so much, Courtney, for coming online and sharing your wisdom with us this morning. I've got your website scrolling at the bottom of the screen. Hopefully, anybody out there who's needing support, who's needing help to get a new job, to transition out of a job, they can reach out to you. And I know that you play a lot on LinkedIn, so they can look for you as well on LinkedIn using your name.
Thanks so much for having me.
And thanks to everybody who tuned in today. I'll be back again tomorrow with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep